This is an example of how to use table components. Table components are a way to define subsets of a table, which are essentially the columns. And this would be quite useful for databases that have large number of columns, or legacy systems that have huge numbers that aren't even supported by SQL. And generally people use this whenever there's large amounts of data inside of a table, like images, blobs, pictures, huge amounts of data that you really don't want to select and save all the time because you want to do it sparingly. So you would define a subset. So we'll try that on this category object of the Acme Sales model. Now the category table has a picture defined in it of type data type image. So this image can actually hold a large amount of data. Or text field is another example. There are certain SQL Server fields that can hold large amounts of data. You don't want to select them all the time. Perhaps you just want to select the name of categories and save it back to the database, and you don't want to select all this extra data. So what we do is we go to components, and we'll define a new component, and I'll just call it small component. Okay, now we can't actually define any of the fields. All we can do is reference them. So if you right click on the component and say edit, you will actually get a list of all the existing fields within that table. Now I wish to select all of them except for picture because that's the large one I want to ignore. The caveat, you have to have the primary key included into the component, otherwise it doesn't know how to save it back to the database later. Okay, that's it. Components defined. Now I will generate. And we're done. And then let's build it. And we're done. So now this is built. Let's go to our test application. And I have already written a little bit of code to demonstrate this. So if we look at this, we now have a small category collection. Small category collection. Let's go look back at this. Small component. Okay, it's called small component now. Okay, so let's just change small component collection. Okay, so let's build that. Okay, it succeeded. Now you will notice that the category still has a name, just like because we've defined it inside of the component. This also has a name. Now what we're missing is the picture, and just to show that, this category is actually of type small component. So if we were to look at the picture, you notice there is no picture property. It's parent persist. There's no picture here. So essentially what we've done is we've removed that from this selection. So this also is mutable. You can actually persist it. You can persist this object back to the database and save it. Now, obviously, if you disallow any fields from the component, they're going to have to be nullable if you wish to save it back. And they don't have to be nullable if you just want to select it. But if, say, picture right here is nullable, so I can have a null picture. So if I were to select this a component, change something, or just create a new one and save it back to the database, this picture will be null by definition since I'm never setting it. So as long as this in the database actually has the nullable field, that'll be just fine. If this were not nullable and I try to save it back, I would obviously get a persistence error because when it tries to save it to the category table, SQL Server would complain, that error would be bubbled back up, and your API would actually get an error of some type of persist error. So this defines table components and shows you a way that you can save a lot of data from coming across the wire or saving it back across the wire. And again, as I said, some people actually use this for tables that might have 100, 200, 300 columns, and they only need a few of them for some parts of their application, so they don't want to select and persist all that information all the time, so they'll just select a little component of it out. That's very useful functionality.